Fisherman saves injured sea turtle. What happens next is unbelievable. The bitter cold of the March dawn bit through Jack Morrison's weather jacket as he steered the Sea Spirit through the choppy waters of the Gulf Coast. At 62, he was one of the oldest active fishermen still working out of Newport Harbor, Florida. His vessel, a 40-foot commercial fishing boat that had weathered countless storms, creaked beneath his feet. A familiar sound that had become as much a part of his daily life as the smell of salt air and the cry of seabirds. The sun hadn't yet breached the horizon, but Jack had already been on the water for 3 hours. These days, it took longer and longer to make a decent catch. The fishing industry had changed dramatically since he'd inherited the boat from his father 35 years ago. Environmental regulations, rising fuel costs, and declining fish populations had transformed what was once a prosperous family business into an increasingly precarious way of life. His wife, Rebecca, had been gently suggesting for years that maybe it was time to sell the boat and retire. Their children were grown. Michael was a successful accountant in Tampa, and Emma was finishing her PhD in marine biology at the University of Florida. There was no next generation waiting to take over the family business. But Jack couldn't bring himself to give up the only life he'd ever known. The sea was in his blood, as his father used to say. The radio crackled with the morning weather report, forecasting clear skies but strong winds. Jack adjusted his course slightly, heading toward his favorite fishing grounds. The first light of dawn was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of purple and gold when something caught his eye, an unusual disturbance in the water about 100 yards off the port bow. At first, he thought it might be a school of fish breaking the surface, but there was something different about the movement. It was too irregular, too desperate. Through the growing light, he could see seabirds circling the area, their behavior agitated and focused. "What the hell?" Jack muttered, reaching for his binoculars. Through the powerful lenses, his heart sank at what he saw. A massive sea turtle was thrashing in the water, its movements frantic and uncoordinated. Even from this distance, he could see something was terribly wrong. Without hesitation, Jack turned the Sea Spirit toward the struggling creature. In his decades on the water, he'd seen his share of marine animals in distress, usually tangled in abandoned fishing gear or plastic debris. It was one of the ugly realities of modern commercial fishing, and it never failed to fill him with a mixture of sadness and guilt. As he drew closer, the full extent of the turtle's predicament became clear. It was a loggerhead sea turtle, one of the largest he'd ever seen, probably weighing close to 350 pounds. But what made his stomach clench was the mass of fishing nets and ropes wrapped around its body. A large plastic buoy was tangled around its right front flipper, and a mess of synthetic rope was wrapped around its shell, clearly cutting into its flesh. "Hold on there, old-timer," Jack said softly, already moving to retrieve his rescue gear. The words brought back a sudden flood of memories. 10 years ago, his daughter Emma had convinced him to take a marine animal rescue course offered by the local wildlife center. He'd grumbled about it at the time, seeing it as a waste of precious fishing hours, but Emma had insisted. "Dad," she'd said, "you're out there every day. You could make such a difference." Now, he sent a silent thank you to his daughter for her persistence. Getting such a large turtle aboard safely would be no easy task. Jack worked methodically, following the procedures he'd learned in his training. First, he needed to secure the area around the turtle to prevent it from swimming away or diving deep. Using his fishing nets, he created a makeshift corral, carefully circling the struggling creature. The loggerhead was clearly exhausted. Its head barely broke the surface now, and its movements were becoming increasingly weak. Jack knew he had to act fast. With practiced movements, he positioned his lift net beneath the turtle, attaching it to the mechanical winch that usually hauled in his catch. "Easy now, easy," he murmured as the winch groaned under the turtle's weight. Water cascaded from its massive shell as it was lifted from the sea. Up close, the damage was even worse than he'd feared. The ropes had cut deep into the flesh around its flipper and had carved painful-looking grooves in its shell. Some of the wounds showed signs of infection, angry red flesh visible beneath the tangled mess of rope and net. Getting the turtle safely onto the deck was a delicate operation that took all of Jack's strength and skill. Once the creature was secured, he could properly assess its condition. The injuries were severe, but what struck him most were the turtle's eyes. There was an ancient wisdom in those dark orbs, a deep weariness that seemed to mirror his own. "You've seen a lot of years out here, haven't you?" Jack said softly, carefully beginning to document the turtle's condition with his phone's camera. Emma had taught him the importance of documentation for the rescue centers. "Well, today's your lucky day, friend. We're going to get you some help." Jack reached for his radio, calling the Coast Guard to report the injured turtle. They quickly put him in touch with the Gulf Coast Marine Wildlife Rescue Center in Crystal River, about 40 miles down the coast. As he described the turtle's condition to the rescue coordinator, he was surprised to hear a familiar voice on the other end of the line. "Dad? Is that you? Emma? What are you doing at the rescue center?" His daughter's laugh crackled over the radio. "I'm doing my dissertation research here, remember? I told you about it at Christmas. Stay where you are, we'll send out our rescue boat right away. Can you describe the turtle's injuries again?" Jack spent the next 15 minutes providing detailed information about the turtle's condition while Emma guided him through some basic first aid measures. He carefully poured fresh water over the wounds to clean them as best he could, talking softly to the turtle the whole time. "You know," he said, checking the turtle's shell for additional injuries, "my Emma, she's always loved sea turtles. When she was little, she used to make me stop fishing to watch whenever we saw one surface near the boat. Used to drive me crazy, we were losing precious fishing time. But she'd get so excited, jumping up and down, pointing and squealing. 'Dad, Dad, look at the turtle.' Now she's about to become Dr. Morrison, studying these magnificent creatures. Funny how life works out, isn't it?" The turtle remained remarkably calm during Jack's examination, its ancient eyes watching his every move. Despite its grave injuries, there was a resilience about the creature that touched something deep in Jack's soul. This turtle had probably been swimming these waters since before he was born, surviving countless challenges only to end up entangled in humanity's debris. The rescue boat arrived faster than Jack had expected, cutting through the waves with purpose. As it drew alongside the Sea Spirit, Jack saw Emma in the bow, her red hair whipping in the wind. She looked so professional in her rescue center uniform, so confident and capable. His chest swelled with pride. "Good morning, Captain Morrison," she called out with a grin as the boats were secured together. "Let's see our patient." The rescue team worked efficiently, transferring the turtle to their specially equipped vessel. Emma moved with assured precision, examining the wounds and taking measurements. "She's a female," she announced, "probably around 60 years old. These injuries are serious, but I think we can save her if we act quickly." "She?" Jack raised an eyebrow, just as he had done countless times when Emma was growing up and sharing random turtle facts. "The tail length and size of the shell," Emma explained automatically, not looking up from her examination. "Dad, this is amazing. Despite her injuries, she's in remarkably good condition otherwise. She must be an incredibly resilient animal." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Jack followed the rescue boat back to Crystal River, his days fishing forgotten. Something about this turtle had captured his attention completely. At the rescue center, he watched in amazement as Emma worked alongside the veterinary team, her movements sure and professional as she assisted with the delicate process of removing the tangled ropes and treating the wounds. Dr. Sarah Chun, the center's lead veterinarian, provided a detailed assessment of the turtle's condition. "The injuries are severe, particularly around the right flipper. There's significant muscle damage and infection that we'll need to treat aggressively. But she's strong, and thanks to your quick action, Mr. Morrison, I believe she has a good chance at recovery." "How long will she need to stay here?" Jack asked, surprised by how invested he already felt in the turtle's fate. "At least 2 to 3 months, Dr. Chun replied. "We'll need to treat the infections, allow the wounds to heal, and then work on physical therapy to ensure she regains full use of her flipper. Would you like to name her?" We always let the rescuers name our patients. Jack thought for a moment, looking at the massive turtle now resting in a medical tank. Despite her injuries, there was a quiet dignity about her, a sense of endurance that reminded him of someone. "Grace," he said finally. "Her name is Grace." Emma smiled. "Like Grandma Grace?" Jack nodded. His mother had been the strongest person he'd ever known, running the family fishing business alone after his father was lost at sea, raising 3 children by herself, never giving up no matter how hard things got. "She's a survivor," he said simply. The following weeks brought unexpected changes to Jack's life. He found himself stopping by the rescue center whenever he could, checking on Grace's progress. Emma was always there, eager to share updates about the turtle's recovery and tell him about her research. He discovered that he enjoyed learning about sea turtles from his daughter, seeing these ancient creatures through her eyes. The local media picked up on Grace's story, running several features about the fisherman who had saved the injured turtle. Jack found himself becoming something of a local celebrity, much to his embarrassment. Other fishermen began calling him when they spotted marine animals in distress, and he discovered that his years of experience at sea made him uniquely qualified to assist in rescue operations. 1 month turned into 2, then 3. Grace's recovery was slow but steady. The infections cleared up under the careful treatment of the medical team, and her wounds began to heal. Jack was there the day they moved her to the rehabilitation pool, watching with joy as she took her first strong strokes in the water. "You know, Dad," Emma said one evening as they sat watching Grace swim, "your rescue of Grace has given us some invaluable data for my research. I'm studying the long-term effects of fishing gear entanglement on sea turtle population dynamics. But more than that, you've helped us show other fishermen that they can be part of the solution." Jack looked at his daughter, seeing in her eyes the same love for the sea that had driven him all his life, just expressed in a different way. "Your mother thinks I should sell the boat," he said quietly. "Says it's time to retire." Emma was silent for a moment. "What do you think?" I think maybe there's more than one way to stay connected to the sea." He gestured toward Grace. The center's director mentioned they're looking for someone to coordinate with the fishing community, someone who knows these waters and can train others in marine animal rescue techniques. Emma's face lit up. "Dad, you'd be perfect for that, and you could still take the sea spirit out just for a different purpose." The decision wasn't easy. Fishing wasn't just what Jack did. It was who he was, who his family had been for generations. But as he watched Grace glide smoothly through the water of her rehabilitation pool, he realized that perhaps this was how traditions evolved, not by being abandoned, but by being transformed into something new. The day they released Grace back into the Gulf of Mexico was bright and clear, perfect for a new beginning. A crowd had gathered to watch, local media, center volunteers, and many of Jack's fellow fishermen. Emma stood beside him on the rescue boat, professional but unable to hide her excitement. Grace was calm as they lowered her into the water, almost as if she knew she was going home. The tracking device attached to her shell would help Emma and her colleagues monitor her movements and learn more about loggerhead migration patterns. As soon as Grace hit the water, she moved with purpose, her powerful flippers carrying her strongly through the waves. "There she goes," Emma whispered, wiping tears from her eyes. "Back where she belongs." Jack wrapped an arm around his daughter's shoulders, his own eyes misty. "You know, when I first found her, I thought I was just saving a turtle. Turns out she was saving me too." Emma looked up at him. "What do you mean?" "Well, look at us." He gestured to the rescue center boat they were standing on, so different from his fishing vessel. "If it weren't for Grace, I might never have seen this side of the ocean, never truly understood what you've been trying to tell me all these years about protecting it. Sometimes the best changes in life come from the most unexpected places." In the years that followed, Jack became an integral part of the Marine Wildlife Rescue Center. His knowledge of the local waters and marine life proved invaluable, and he trained countless other fishermen in rescue techniques. The program he helped develop became a model for other coastal communities, bridging the gap between commercial fishing and marine conservation. Emma completed her PhD, her research on sea turtle conservation earning widespread recognition in the scientific community. She often collaborated with her father, their different perspectives and experiences creating a unique approach to marine protection that respected both the environment and the fishing community's needs. Grace's tracking device showed she remained in the area, returning each nesting season to lay her eggs on the same beaches where she had probably been born decades ago. Jack liked to think she remembered him, though Emma told him that was unlikely. Still, whenever he saw a loggerhead turtle surface near his boat, now painted with the rescue center's colors, he would wave and say, "Hello, old friend." 5 years after Grace's rescue, Emma burst into Jack's office at the rescue center, her face glowing with excitement. "Dad, you need to see this." She pulled up some images on her computer. "Remember how we tagged Grace? Well, look at these nesting patterns we've recorded. She's not just coming back to lay eggs. She's created one of the most successful nesting sites we've ever documented. Her offspring are thriving, and they're showing unusual site fidelity. It's like she's established a whole new colony." Jack studied the data, amazement growing as he understood what he was seeing. That one act of kindness, that one decision to help an injured turtle, had cascaded into something far bigger than himself. Grace's descendants would swim these waters for generations to come, all because he'd taken the time to stop and help on that cold March morning years ago. The story of the fisherman and the turtle became legend along the Gulf Coast, inspiring a new generation of marine conservationists. Jack's transition from commercial fisherman to marine wildlife advocate helped change attitudes throughout the fishing community. Other fishermen began to see themselves not just as harvesters of the sea's bounty, but as stewards of its welfare. The sea spirit still plied the waters of the Gulf, but now it carried scientists and researchers studying marine life, hosted educational tours for school children, and responded to marine animals in distress. Jack found that his new role brought him a deeper satisfaction than he'd ever known as a commercial fisherman. He was still making his living from the sea, but in a way that helped ensure there would be something left for future generations. Rebecca, who had once urged him to retire, now joked that she saw less of him than when he was fishing. But she couldn't deny the joy that sparkled in his eyes when he talked about his work at the rescue center, or the pride in his voice when he spoke of Emma's research. On quiet evenings, Jack would sometimes take the sea spirit out alone, cutting the engine to drift in the gentle swells as the sun set over the Gulf. Often, he would see loggerhead turtles surface nearby, their ancient shells catching the golden light before they disappeared beneath the waves. Were they Grace's offspring? Part of the new colony she had established? It didn't really matter. What mattered was that they were still here, still swimming free, still part of the great web of life that connected everything in these waters. "Thank you," he would whisper to the sea, to Grace, to whatever twist of fate had put him in the right place at the right time that March morning years ago. The wind carried his words away, but their meaning remained, echoing in the gentle splash of waves against the hull and in the cry of seabirds wheeling overhead. As he turned his boat toward home, Jack would reflect on how one small act of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives both human and animal in ways he never could have imagined. He had set out that morning years ago to catch fish, but instead he had caught something far more valuable. A new purpose, a deeper connection to the ocean he loved, and the joy of knowing that sometimes the most important catches are the ones we never expected to make. The legacy of Jack Morrison and Grace the turtle lived on in the countless marine animals saved by the fishermen he trained, in the research his daughter conducted, and in the changed attitudes of the fishing community toward marine conservation. But perhaps most importantly, it lived on in the hearts of those who heard their story, a reminder that it's never too late to chart a new course, and that sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with a single act of compassion. And somewhere out in the vast waters of the Gulf of Mexico, Grace and her descendants continue to swim, their very existence a testament to the difference one person can make when they choose to listen to their heart and take action, even when it means setting aside their own plans to help another in need. 10 years after Grace's rescue, the Morrison Marine Conservation Program, as it came to be known, had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. Jack, now in his 70s but still as passionate as ever, had trained over 500 fishermen in marine animal rescue techniques. The program had saved countless sea turtles, dolphins, manatees, and other marine creatures. But perhaps more importantly, it had changed the culture of the fishing community along the Gulf Coast. Emma's research had gained international recognition. Her studies of Grace's nesting patterns and the subsequent population dynamics had been published in several prestigious scientific journals. She had become a leading voice in marine conservation, often speaking at international conferences about the successful partnership between the fishing industry and conservation efforts that her father had helped pioneer. The Sea Spirit had been retrofitted with state-of-the-art research equipment, becoming a floating laboratory for marine research. Local school children would visit on field trips, their eyes wide with wonder as Jack, now affectionately known as Captain Conservation, shared stories about Grace and taught them about the importance of protecting marine life. One particularly memorable day, during a routine patrol, Jack spotted something that made his heart skip a beat. A large loggerhead turtle surfaced near the boat, its shell bearing distinctive markings he would never forget. It was Grace, now estimated to be in her 70s, still swimming strong in her home waters. "Emma," he called to his daughter, who was aboard that day conducting research. "Look who's come to say hello." They watched in amazement as Grace swam gracefully around the boat, almost as if she was performing an inspection. The tracking device they had attached years ago was long gone, but there was no doubt in either of their minds that this was their old friend. "She looks magnificent," Emma whispered, quickly photographing the encounter. "Look at how healthy she is, Dad. And to think, if you hadn't stopped that morning." Jack nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The sight of Grace, thriving after all these years, was more rewarding than any fishing catch he'd ever made. They tracked her for several hours that day, documenting her behavior and noting how she interacted with other sea turtles in the area, many of whom were likely her own offspring. That evening, as they headed back to port, Emma showed Jack some remarkable satellite data. "Dad, remember that unusual nesting pattern we discovered? Well, it's become even more extraordinary. The nesting site Grace established has become one of the most successful loggerhead breeding grounds in the entire Gulf of Mexico. Her descendants now account for nearly 15% of the local loggerhead population. One turtle's survival has literally changed the ecosystem of this entire region." The impact of Grace's rescue continued to ripple outward. The Morrison Marine Conservation Program became a model for similar initiatives around the world. Fishing communities from as far away as Australia and Japan sent representatives to learn from Jack's experience. The program had proved that conservation and commercial fishing could not only coexist but actually benefit from each other. Rebecca, watching her husband's transformation from struggling fisherman to respected conservationist, often remarked that Grace had given them far more than they had given her. The turtles' rescue had not only provided Jack with a new purpose but had also brought their family closer together. Their son Michael, inspired by the program's success, had left his accounting job to help manage the growing organization, using his business skills to secure grants and expand their reach. As Jack approached his 75th birthday, the rescue center organized a surprise celebration in his honor. Hundreds of people gathered: fishermen he had trained, scientists he had worked with, children he had taught, and countless others whose lives had been touched by the program. The highlight of the evening was the dedication of a new rehabilitation facility, named the Morrison Sea Turtle Recovery Center. During the ceremony, Emma shared a discovery that brought tears to her father's eyes. Using DNA analysis, they had confirmed that over 3,000 loggerhead turtles currently swimming in the Gulf were direct descendants of Grace. Each of these turtles carried within them a living legacy of that one crucial moment when a fisherman had chosen to stop and help an injured creature. "You see, Dad," Emma said, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd, "when you saved Grace that morning, you didn't just save one turtle, you saved generations of turtles. And you didn't just change one life, you changed thousands of lives, both human and animal. You showed us all that it's never too late to make a difference. Never too late to change course. Never too late to create a legacy that will live on long after we're gone." Jack's response was characteristically humble. "I just did what anyone would have done," he said. "Grace did all the hard work. She's the one who survived, who came back year after year, who created a new generation of turtles. I just helped her get a second chance. But everyone knew it was more than that. Jack Morrison had done more than save a turtle. He had helped transform an entire industry's relationship with the ocean. He had shown that the choice between making a living from the sea and protecting it was a false one. There was a way to do both, to honor both the human need for sustenance and the natural world's need for conservation. As the celebration concluded, Jack stood at the edge of the dock, looking out over the darkening waters of the Gulf. The same waters that had sustained his family for generations now held a different kind of wealth, the wealth of knowledge, of conservation, of harmony between humans and nature. The fishing boats returning to harbor no longer just carried catches of fish. They carried hope for the future of the oceans. And somewhere out there, Grace continued to swim, her journey intertwined with the journeys of countless others, human and animal alike, all connected by one moment of compassion on a cold March morning. Her story, and Jack's, would continue to inspire future generations, reminding them that every act of kindness, no matter how small it might seem at the time, has the power to create waves of change that can transform the world. The end of Jack's fishing career had become the beginning of something far more meaningful, a legacy of conservation and compassion that would continue long after he was gone, carried forward by the gentle giants of the sea and the people who cared enough to protect them. As the stars began to appear over the Gulf of Mexico, Jack smiled, knowing that somewhere beneath those sparkling waters, Grace and her descendants were swimming freely, their very existence a testament to the power of one simple act of kindness, and the extraordinary changes that can occur when humanity chooses to protect and preserve the natural world rather than simply exploit it. And so the story of the fisherman and the turtle lives on, not just as a tale of rescue and rehabilitation, but as a beacon of hope for all who believe that it's never too late to make a difference, never too late to change, and never too late to create a legacy that will ripple through the generations, touching lives both human and animal in ways we might never fully comprehend.